Can I first ask you what got you interested in music?
Got me interested in music. It goes back a long while during the war, actually, World War II war. My auntie and uncle had an old gramophone with a collection of records. Probably it was Harry Parry, the clarinetist, that really got me, and Artie Shaw got me interested in the clarinet. Got interested in jazz, and I had some records by what's their name, Bob Crosby and the Bobcats.
Oh, yes.
All those sort of things. And when they used to go out of an evening, I used to creep in their bedroom, and play these records. And I got really into it, and that's the first interest I've got into jazz. So I would say I was about 10, 11, 12 years old,
really?
around that time, yeah.
Yeah.
And at the age of 16, I bought a clarinet, an old Clinton system, and but the guy who sold the old boot shop used to be in the Broadway. It wasn't a very good clarinet. It only worked up the top of the instrument, not the bottom. But so I struggled with that, and sort of packed it in.
Mm.
Then I went into the Air Force, did my national service at 18, and with a lot of musicians. Spike Heatley, bass player, was with Dankworth, was one of the police, RAF police there, and a guy called Al Saxon. His name was Alan Fowler, but he became Al Saxon. He got actually, I think, second in the hit parade with a song called You're the Tops in the 50s. Great pianist, he used to play on the NAFI every night. Of course, I got interested. And he said to me, he played trumpet as well. He said, if you learn the bugle, you get in the station band, you get extra 48 a month. So that's 48-hour leave a month. So within about 5 or 6 weeks, he taught me how to play a bugle. So from there, I played in the station band. I used to play Rivali in the mornings. Used to go to funerals and play the last post. Used to in the evening, play the flag up or the flag down, whatever. And there was a saxophone on the in the band room there at the time, and I got the use of it. And I had about 3 lessons with a guy in Oxford at that time. I was 17 then. No, sorry, I was 19 then. And had a few lessons, and I got really interested in it. And I used to put it under my bed, the saxophone. And then one weekend I came back from my 48, took the saxophone out, and some Scotchman who got drunk over the weekend peed in it.
No.
Yeah, he actually peed in it, and it was awful. So I had to return that back to the camp. So I waited till I got out of the Air Force, and I finished my apprenticeship at the age of 21, because I worked at the Southend Standard. I finished apprenticeship as a photographic engraver. And instead of taking 2 weeks to go to my next job, I went straight to the next job and had my 2 weeks holiday money. I bought a Boozy and Hawks from Hamilton's in Southend, old Hamilton. And I started from there, had lessons from Kathy Stobart straight away.
Mm.
And I got into it at the age of 20, really, when I came out of the Air Force.
Right.
And the first jazz club I had was at the old Victoria Hotel, which is the old, the Vic corner there.
Yeah.
And the first group I had was Bill Iden drums, Al Saxon on piano, from the RAF of course, Spike Heatley bass, and Kathy Stobart. That's the first live session I ever ran.
Wow.
So on a Friday night. And the next group I had 2 weeks later was probably one of the finest groups I've ever booked. One of my favourites was very young Tubby Hayes then, on sax, and Jimmy Duker trumpet, who's I think probably one of the finest trumpet players ever come out of the British Isles, because he's Scottish, Jimmy Duker was. And I had Johnny Weed, who went to America on piano, Major Holly, the American bass player, and of course the greatest drummer, Phil Seaman. And that was a hell of a quintet. It should be packed. And I ran it there for Friday night for a while till there was an awful fight one night, and it sort of finished it off. But at that time, that's where I met great Joe Harriott, who I've become very, very close friends with. Actually, I've got a book. The book's just come out the last few months of the life of Joe Harriott, and I've contributed quite a few pages to it.
Oh, right. Yeah.
So we were great friends.
Yeah.
And at that time, I met a guy called Haig Joyce, who used to play under the name of Bill Haig, because he worked for an insurance company and they didn't really like an insurance guy to be associated with jazz. You got all this crap those years ago. You know?
Yeah.
And he did like a drink. And he used to have a place over in Eastwood, right at the end. He's this bungalow that's filled. And we used to have sessions there on a Friday night. We used to go from the club, get the young ladies, get the beer. Well, we used to get quarts of brown ale, light ale, and the girls used to have Chianti and VP port, which was awful stuff. It wasn't. Haig used to have his own scotch, you know, tucked away, but in those days it was all sort of beer and the cheapest sort of.
Yeah.
And we used to have parties all night there. And I mean, we've had some of the greatest musicians come there. But that's, you know, other stories. I mean, there's so many stories I can tell.
Yeah, that's interesting. Who can you remember seeing perform music first?
The first one I ever saw live was Freddie Randall, the trumpet player Freddie Randall. That was because I was into trad with the Guinea.
All right.
That's when I was 17. Then Humphrey Lyttelton appeared at the Old Middleton Hotel, which is a Bacchanalia, I think.
Did he?
Become the Bacchanalia.
Yeah.
Now it's an Irish bar, isn't it? Yeah, opposite the station, South End Central Station. I saw Humphrey Lyttelton there with Wally Fawkes was on clarinet, Keith Christie on trombone. Hell of a band that was. But when I went into the RAF, I heard Jerry Mulligan do Nights of the Turntable, and also like Jules Shearing. I love that. I completely.
You heard those on records?
Pardon?
On records, you heard those?
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
I completely changed from the traditional side into the modern side, and then it sort of went on from there. My interest, you know.
Yeah. So what made you choose the saxophone as opposed to the clarinet?
I don't know, I just love saxophones. I always did, you know. I love clarinets, but going into the modern side of it, you know, I wasn't, I didn't really get on great with a clarinet, I must admit. But after sort of starting on the saxophone during my RAF days, I much preferred it.
Right. Yeah.
So I went from there, you know, but I started very late. I mean, you get these kids now. I mean, you take Dick Morrissey at 20, was out blowing, and Tubby, and they were brilliant players at that age, you know.
Yeah.
But listening to these guys got me more interested in it.
Right. So when and where did you first perform in public as sort of a jazz
It was
gig?
the Arlington Hall.
Oh, right.
It was the Arlington Hall with Norman Barron. Norman Barron, the trumpet player, used to play with Basil Kirchin's orchestra. He lived down here, and he formed a little quintet. And we did the interval up at the Arlington one Sunday afternoon.
Right.
And I always remember that one, because I was so nervous, you know. And went on from there, really. But he was a great arranger, Norman, and we had a great little band round here, you know. But then Norman left, he went to Hull, and I had a trumpet player called Terry Lippman, who I visited, he lives in Texas now, and I went to see him about 5 years ago and stayed with him over there.
Right.
He was with me for a while, we did a quintet. And then I met Vic Wood, because Terry went to Australia, and I met Vic, who was in the army at the time. I was about 24, 25 then, and because of Terry leaving, I asked him if he would be interested. He said yes. So he brought along, he was good friends with Pat Green and Pete Holder, and we found Roy Weatherly.
Yeah.
So I had all these great plumbing. Pete Hull was a great bass player, and Pat Green to me is probably one of the finest drummers ever come out of this area. I mean, Joe Harriott really rated him, you know, and a lot of the boys who played with him, Kathy, Don Rendell, all rated Pat. And Roy Weather is a great pianist who just still lives around the corner. I used to go and visit regularly. Yeah. I'm afraid he can't get out to play anymore, but he was a marvellous player. He still is, actually.
Yeah.
And of course, Vic, young Vic, as he came out the army, we formed the Southend Modern Jazz Quintet, which was the SMJQ, which we went on to win the Great Britain. Well, we tied for first place for the Great Britain Amateur Jazz competition at Richmond.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah. And then we went to, I think '66, we went up to the Isle of Man, and we won the Great Britain Amateur Jazz Band competition there. And then we won the Hintlesham Jazz Festival. So we've done very, very well, actually.
Yeah.
But we played the Marquee. You know, we played quite SMJQ. I mean, we used to be packed on a Friday night at the Elms. And to be quite honest, I mean, we're going back a long while now, as I say, my middle 20s. We used to pack the Elms on a Friday night, and we're there Saturday night, and after 9 o'clock you couldn't get in on either nights.
Wow.
And then, of course, the rock, the boys with the guitars came in, and they gradually took it all over, I'm afraid.
Yeah.
So, but I used to play the studios in Westcliff, which was a fantastic place. It's a cellar club owned by a guy called Rodney Saxon, who was a really nice guy. His parents had it, and we used to go down in the cellar and play jazz down there.
I first met Kenny Baxter back at the middle months of 1962. I just gone to the sixth form. I was 16 years old, I think, and Kenny was 28 at the time. And every Friday night we used to go down to a wonderful jazz club, which the long-term denizens of Southend will remember very well, called Studio Jazz, which is in Station Road. And every Friday night, Kenny played there with his wonderful SMJQ, Southend Modern Jazz Quintet. I'd never heard a live band close up before, but from the first time I heard him, I knew that was a very, very special group. It was a superb band, and they really set the standards, not only for Southend, I must say, probably for, well, miles and miles beyond. They were an extraordinarily great band.
So for your first public gig in the jazz realm, were you well paid for that, or was it more or less a freebie?
More or less
Done
a free, it was a
done
freebie.
for fun. Yeah.
Most of the work at the early days was freebies.
Yeah.
I remember, first of all, when we went to the Elms, we got 12 guineas. Then, because we packed it out, we got 15 guineas.
That's for the band?
Yeah, for the band.
Right.
We used to get 2 guineas each, then
Right.
also £2.50 each, I think, something like that.
Yeah.
And then it was 3 guineas each.
Right. So have you worked with many other band leaders?
Not band leaders, no. Really. I've really always fronted my own groups. I mean, when you look through, I had the Southend Modern Jazz Quintet. Then, I mean, I had various sort of quartets. I mean, I did the Middleton on the lunchtime there with Johnny Baker, Kenny Bassett and Pat Green, just a quartet, 3 of us, you know.
Yeah.
We used to be packed there on a Sunday lunchtime.
Yeah.
And a governor, we used to do it for free beer. Now, I've got to tell you this story, because a new governor came in. We was packed. So we thought, you know, everything was as usual. So I went over, and it's funny enough, he served me, and I said, oh, cheers. And I walked away with the boys' drinks. I always remember, it's 3 pints, and Johnny Baker was like gin and tonic, you know. And he said, that sounds hard. I said, no, we do it for free. We do it for free drinks. He said, not why I'm bloody well here. I said, well, that's why we play here. We play for free drinks. He said, no, you don't anymore. So I saw him after. He said, no. He said, if you want to play, you can do, but you don't get free drinks. And that's the truth. I said, well, I'll wait and see what you know, make your mind up on it. So, of course, the next few weeks people went because it become a social place for people to meet socially, you know, and so forth. So after about 3 or 4 weeks, I phoned him up. I said, "Have you changed your mind on this?" He said, "No." He said, "I still do. Well, I don't have to, you know, have music." So someone told me that a guy, I forget his name, Bill, at the Top Alex was interested in putting live music on. So I went to see him. So he said, "Well, I'll tell you what I'll do." He said, "I'll offer you 12 guineas lunchtime." He said, "and a free beer each." So there's 5 of you. Because at that time I'd got Digby Fairweather interested, I think, at that time. Or perhaps the time after. Anyway, we went in there, and within 2 weeks I'd taken the whole crowd from
The Middleton.
and I was at 25 years at Top Alex.
Really? As long as that?
25 years,
Wow.
yeah.
So, how many years have you been promoting live music in the town?
50 years this November.
Amazing.
That's from the I told you with Kathy Stobart.
Yeah. Why do you do it?
Well, I've always been interested in the arts. I've never had anything offered to me from Eastern Arts, ever. I had no acknowledgement ever. There was a guy called Warren Larkin, I think his name was. He used to write for the Evening Echo. After 25 years, he's told me that, I think he was on the committee of Eastern Arts, that after 25 years of doing it, I was going to get something said or given to me. I don't know what, but at that time. So I didn't get it. And 50 years later, I still haven't had any acknowledgement from Eastern Arts.
Amazing.
The only thing they ever did was kill when our Monday night local jazz there years ago, when we had a great scene going. Somebody came down, we all know who that is, and said, "Oh, I'll bring the top bands in because I've got money." And I took it over on the Monday, then changed it to a Thursday. And all the local bands at that time all had turns. We had 4, I think it was, alternative.
That's right.
We used to get packed on Monday nights there.
Oh yeah.
Do you think he's received due recognition for his contribution?
I think there's 1 or 2 things to say about that. One is that, as far as the jazz public is concerned, he'd never be forgotten. It's certainly all the way around our part of the world. People like arts councils, I think, tend to look at, how shall I put it, cutting edge projects that they may have conceived for themselves, and then lay the production of such a concept on somebody who's kind of fairly peripheral. I don't know whether Kenny remembers this, but I do remember that on one occasion, the introduction of a new club by an arts-based organisation actually somewhat disrupted one of his very successful venues. And I think he perhaps feels a bit badly about that. I will tell you one thing. In the year 2000, I was very fortunate to be awarded the Freedom of the City of Freedom of Southend for the Millennium Roll of Honour. I'd like to say publicly that I always felt that Kenny should have got that, because most of my career in the late years was away from Southend, and Kenny has unquestionably done more for the local scene than I ever did, and been more of a philanthropist too. And I would very much like to see him get the Freedom of the Borough. In fact, I put him up for it this year, and I can't think of a better time for him to get it, so I do hope they come through.
Do you think the public appreciates your efforts promoting the live music?
I think, yes. Yeah. 1 or 2 people have said, tried to tell me how to do it. Of course, you always get that. But see, the greatest thing about running the jazz, you set up so many people they meet, for the first time. Because when somebody comes down on their own, They come down, they enjoy it. They come down the next week and they see somebody they've seen the previous week. They said, "You were here last week, you know. Did you enjoy it?" Yeah, and they start talking.
Mm.
I mean, there's quite a few couples who've got married through
Is
meeting
that
through
right?
my jazz. Yeah,
Yeah.
yes, quite a few,
Yeah.
and quite a few divorces.
Right.
Why? People come in and meet somebody else.
Right.
That's another story.
Do you think there's been a decline in the number of venues available
Oh,
for
yes.
live bands, and if so, what's the reason for this?
Well, there's definitely a decline. I mean, I could go out into Southend and so many nights listen to live music. Perhaps not all jazz, but good music, you know. But let's face it, I blame a lot of it onto the breweries. They don't ever invest in live music. Now and again, you see Budweiser have put up for some certain show, but it's they're only doing that because they're not going to be a big crowd there and they can put their name out to quite a few people, and they have to do things like this now and again. But the breweries, are so greedy, in my opinion. And of course, there's this law against more than 2 musicians in a pub, which is absolutely ridiculous. I mean, you get two musicians in a pub. You've got all the synthesizer sounds on the keyboard, a drum machine. You get bass sound on there. The guy singing, and the guitarist singing. It can be 10 times louder, and a little trio with a saxophone and a voice.
Or worse still, they're using tapes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're not using live musicians.
Yeah.
And I've always fought for live music, always in my life. I hate backing tapes. Don't like tribute bands, and my biggest hate is karaoke. I mean, people to go out and want to listen to a dozen bad singers, I just can't understand it. You can have a laugh, but I mean, now and again, you know, perhaps for a little evening, you go out, especially perhaps on holiday, and you get a few people up singing, okay. But to make an evening of it.
So what do you think needs to be done to improve matters on the live music front?
Well, this law to be changed on 2 musicians in a pub. Right, take it to 4.
Right.
Try it with 4. No, not above that, perhaps. Perhaps you can have a guest come in for a couple of numbers or something. But this law, I mean, you can't go to a pub and you know, have a big orchestra, so forth. It'd be nice, I know, back room perhaps, but the law's got to be changed on that because it's putting musicians out of work.
Yeah, that's right.
But I mean, the trouble is, governors of pubs don't really like paying a lot of money out anyway. As I say, if they're helped by the brewery to finance these things, you'd have a lot more interest in live music.
That's right.
And a lot more musicians working.
Definitely.
Because musicians never ask for a fortune in a pub anyway.
Would you describe him as central to Southend's jazz scene?
Oh, absolutely. A kingpin. I mean, from those days back in 1962, he'd already been organising jazz, playing jazz, leading his band for, I think, 3 or 4 years at least, possibly more. But from the time I met him right up to today, he's always been at the centre of Southend jazz. I think probably with respect to the other great musicians who have worked around here, Kenny Baxter is much more synonymous with Southend jazz than anybody else. He's provided a stage for young musicians to play, for established stars to play, and for his own groups to play. And he's been a tremendous philanthropist for the music, as well as, of course, being a great tenor player as well.
How about the quality of his bands? You mentioned the SMJQ.
Oh, superbly high. The SMJQ, which is the first group that I ever heard him play with, was extraordinarily good. Just for the record, the drummer was Pat Green, the bassist was Eddie Johnson, our dear friend who's still very active 42 years later on the Southern jazz scene, Norman Coker on piano, who I seem to remember now is more in the way of an established artist than a pianist. He may still play. Then, of course, the phenomenal Rick Wood, which more later, perhaps, in my view, probably pound for pound, one of the greatest trumpet players ever in Great Britain in the jazz scene. And, of course, Kenny leading. And it was a wonderful group. It was so polished, and they played a lot of very contemporary material, very well rehearsed. It always reminded me somewhat of the Max Roach Clifford Brown Quintet, which was a superb orchestra, obviously, but Vic could play a lot like Clifford Brown. Kenny played rather like Sonny Rollins, and they played a lot of very well arranged material. I remember Valse Hot, one of the things they played, and they played Cannonball Adderley tunes, and everything they played was supremely polished. And really, every band that he's ever had ever since, to me, has maintained that standard, all the way through his fusion years with turntable, right up to the later days, now, in fact, when he's, I suppose, reverted to his, if you like, his musical homeland of hard bop. But all the bands he's had have always used the very best musicians available and maintained a very high standard, I think.
How would you describe Kenny's musical personality?
Well, he's a strong personality, and despite the fact that he's, on the face of it, easygoing, he's always known exactly what he wants, how to achieve it, and he knows the kind of music he wants to play and the kind of things he wants to hear from other musicians. And what he wants to hear is always very good. So I would say he's a powerful man, yes. I mean, in the young days, of course, he was, well, still is probably, quite a sex symbol as well, by the way. I used to say to him, well, I think I remember him saying to himself, he said, you know, I do practice the tenor an awful lot. He said, but the girls wait till after I finished. And in the early days, he had loads of girlfriends, I remember. Then, of course, he had his first wife, so it all stopped then. Of course, now he's got Darling Tony. But he is a very charismatic man and a powerful man. And I do remember, actually, in the early 1970s, when I started playing my sort of music, in a sense I had to remind myself that there were other viewpoints than Kenny's, because he was a powerful man. And I remember on one occasion, I was talking about a trumpet player, a very well-known one, who I won't name, and Kenny said, oh, I don't like his playing much. And this man, for me, was an icon. So there came a point at which I had to pull back a little bit. But it didn't in any way alter our friendship. And oh golly, it's only a couple of weeks ago, I think, we went over to this pub to celebrate his 70th birthday, which of course we're celebrating, and embarked on this very enjoyable, occasionally slightly, what's the word I want, chaotic jam session. And I get the chance, if I get the chance, I play with Kenny as I can.
Who have you enjoyed playing saxophone with most over the years?
Well, there's quite a few names there. I mean, of course, Vic and I played together for 42 years. We were in the same band 42 years. Right, he did his things and I did my things. But we had, as I say, I think two of the best bands ever come out of this town was with the SMJQ in those days, for its day, and Turntable.
Have you become a nationally recognised talent, do you think, at the start or later?
Well, that's an interesting question. I think if Kenny did have one piece of very bad luck, it was that when he was getting established with his own groups, it was more or less exactly the time the Beatles came along. And very many, much more well-established musicians than Kenny or Vic fell by the wayside with the 60s. You know, as the beat boom gathered strength, the former stars who made the front page of the Melody Maker were coming down to local pubs and playing for £5. So even musicians as good as Kenny and Vic did have, if you like, the time of the century against them. But talking purely in terms of talent, I think he could certainly have been a very well-rated national name, no question of it.
But I had a little band with Peter Jones called The Touch of Blue Note, Vic and I did, which we did. It wasn't, I only had it for about a couple of years, but I enjoyed that. And I really now enjoy playing with Tim Huskinson and Roger and whatever drummer we have, you know. I really enjoy that because I've gone back to what I wanted to play like years ago.
Yeah.
I mean, I was never a great fusion player. It wasn't really my, wasn't my style really. But we went into it after listening to Robbie Vincent's on Saturday mornings.
Right.
And got interested with, I mean, we love Chat Mangione, Vic. We love that sort of Latin feel.
Right.
And we had a great band.
Yeah, definitely.
Has he kept up with the times since the 60s?
Most certainly. When I first heard Kenny, he was playing, I suppose you'd call it hard bop. But there was a point I remember quite well, back in the early 1970s, I suppose, when we both fell under the teachings of a very fine local drummer called Trevor Taylor, who worked pretty much in what was then the avant-garde end of the music. And I remember both Kenny and I going along to Trevor's sessions and playing this quite difficult, obscure new music. He played it very well, quite a lot on soprano saxophone at that time. And later on, of course, came turntable, which I suppose espoused the music of people like Chuck Mangione. So he's always kept up with the times, which means, of course, that young people have gone along to hear him and found nothing to complain about, in the same way that, you know, a very good traditional band might, if you like, kind of centralise its audience, you know, at a certain age level, might go and hear a traditional band, but Kenny's always kept up with the times. But that's another of his virtues, I think.
Would you say he maintains high standards as a performer?
I think Kenny Baxter has always maintained immaculate standards as a performer. I mean, if you listen to his groups over the years, they were made up of all the very best of the local talents. Right now he uses, well, last time I saw him he was using Tim Huskisson, who's a phenomenal piano player, Roger Curfey, who's a national standard bass player who works with everybody from George Webb to bebop bands. And I think Alan Clark was the drummer on that occasion. And you don't really get much better than that. And whenever I've been to see him, I've been amazed at the way that he never lets his standards fall. He has a terrific way of saying, you know, it must be as good as this, and I don't want it to be any less good than that. And that's another of the things that makes him very special.
And what about his style?
Well, I suppose his style really is, I always think of him basically as a hard bop tenor player. Somewhere between Sonny Rollins and maybe Sonny Stitt, but definitely going towards the Sonny Rollins end of it, that rather hard-toned, oblique tenor, which I associate pretty much with the hard bop moment of the late 50s, early 60s. And he does it beautifully. He's, as we know, he's one of Kathy Stobart's prized pupils. Learned a lot from her, and has carried on playing beautifully ever since.
Would you call him ambitious?
Well, actually, that's one of the few words I wouldn't apply to Kenny. I know a lot of musicians who are enormously ambitious, and I have to say that you can't always correlate the degree of success that a musician achieves with his level of talent. Often it's more the level of ambition that counts and gets somebody somewhere. But with Kenny, well, I mean, I've seen him, for example, turn down a friendly invitation from Spike Robinson, who was an American tenor of international standards who lived over here for years. One night, I remember Spike saying, "Please, Kenny, come and play." But he was too modest to do that. Why, I can't imagine, because they'd made some joyful music together. But no, I wouldn't call him ambitious.
Bit of a leading question now. Is your wife Tony your favourite singer?
Oh, dear me. If I don't say yes, I'm in trouble. Well, on the scene round here, yes, definitely.
Yeah.
But I've met Anita O'Day a few times, you know, and I really love Anita O'Day.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
I've sat with Ella Fitzgerald.
Really?
Yeah, I sat and had a 20-minute jaw with her
Where
in a
was that?
dressing room
Yeah?
behind the Odeon. And Major Holly came over and got in touch with me and asked me to meet him. So I've become great friends with Major Holly. That's another story. I mean, he was Ella's bass player.
Right.
But yes, I think on full Tony's an excellent singer.
I mean, I met Tony later, because Tony is his second wife, of course, as I remember.
Yeah.
And at that time, she was singing with a fine group that had a hit. They were called The Fingers, if I remember rightly, and they had a hit called I Go to Sleep. And Tony, I'm not quite sure of the full details, but I know under a variety of recording names, she had a number of very comfortable turntable hits. And she's always remained a fabulous singer. And it's only the other day I was talking to Brian Dee, the great British jazz pianist, who was saying to me, you know, it's funny, Dig, that she never actually went on to national fame. So perhaps the two of them have that in common in a funny sort of way. But in terms of national talent, she's right up there with the best of them.
Are your children musical?
Well, my oldest boy, Ricky, is in his 40s now. He was a very good pianist, but he went into market research and he's done very, very well for himself. They're all musical, yes, but I mean, I've got 5 children. I've got Ricky, a son Mark, a daughter Lorraine. And I've got Curtis from Tony and I, and I've got Casey, my youngest daughter, and we got a daughter we fostered, Abby. Yes, one, Casey, a brilliant musician. I mean, as Maury Owen, who's a great alto player, used to be lead alto for Dankworth, he taught her, because her and I didn't get on when I was trying to teach her, to be quite honest. And but she can sit with any band and read.
Right.
I mean, she was in the South End Jazz Orchestra,
That's right.
you know,
Yeah.
at the time. And she went out with a band called Sold Out, and used to done very well with them, with your Karen,
That's
who plays
right, yeah.
with the Zoltan
Karen Straw, yeah.
trumpet.
Yeah.
They used to do the front line together.
Yeah.
She's an excellent musician. She's a brilliant pianist. She got grade 7 on piano, and she got honours on grade 7 on saxophone. She took Peter Jacobson for the Guildhall exam, and she got honours.
Right.
And yet now I've got a saxophone there under the piano. She hardly ever touches it.
No.
Which is, she might go back to it.
Yeah.
But she's a world traveller, goes surfing and so forth.
Let's hope so, yeah. What was your main day job?
I was a photographic engraver. I did apprenticeship for the South End Standard, which is the Echo company now. And then I moved to a company called Essex Engraving when I was 21. That's when I told you about the saxophone. And I was with them for 24, 25 years. And I was made redundant from there. And I took 2 years off as a pro musician. Because I had a record out at that time, funny enough.
Did you?
Yeah, a band called Higgins Lot, which is a commercial thing.
Right.
And I had my, at the time of when John Lennon was shot, Terry Wogan was playing this every Monday morning, and one day I had 3 plays, you know, and then John Lennon got shot and it all went. I mean, he never made a hit, but I mean, we earned a bit of money from it. And because I used to do quite a bit of writing, and Tony and I got in the last 10 in Gibraltar Song Festival, out of 300 songs.
All right.
We got to Cavan, the Irish Song Competition. We've got the only people to have 2 songs in the final. We had one of the favourite songs there, but the performance, it didn't go too well on that one. But the next song we got top ballad, and Dana was on the
Same
one of
year?
the judges. Yeah,
Oh, right.
same year. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we got the top in the Cavan Festival. We got the top ballad.
Right.
But
Yeah.
I've written a couple of jazz things now. I've wrote one a little while ago. It's called On the Golden Cloud for Vic Wood, you know.
Right.
And a lot of people have asked me to record it, which I hope to one day. You know.
Yeah.
It's just a melodic thing.
I think you've
by John
played it at a gig
Soprano.
or two, haven't
Yeah,
you? That's
yeah.
right, I've heard it.
Well, my dear friend Vic Wood, yeah, I miss him so much. I mean, we had a great time together. We had fun, we had laughs. I mean, we hardly ever argued, which was great. I mean, if it was, if we had crosswords, it would be over music. Nothing else, you know. Never over money. He was a great friend, you know. And I think we really respected each other. I mean, some people have said, "What the hell have you with him for so bloody long?" You know. But we had a great rapport together, you know. We blended together. We had a great front line.
Yeah.
and we had the same ideas. I mean, when I started crossing over to wanting to do the fusion of the funky stuff and the Chuck Mangione and all that type of stuff we were doing, he jumped on it straight away. Oh yeah, we've got to do this.
Yeah.
And we had new life.
Right.
New life. We've got something really going, and we had great fun out of it. You know. I mean, we did the 100 Club once when I think it was Vic Curtis's when he died. We did a big night up there. There was Tony Kinsey, his group, all the local, so many musicians, and Turntable did a 1 hour spot.
Mm.
I know I had Bobby Armstrong on drums at that time, a percussionist, Vic and I, and our 1 hour spot went down probably as good as anybody.
Mm.
And Tony Kinsey said to somebody, he said, that band, he says, is one of the finest new bands I've heard doing this different stuff.
Mm.
That was in the 80s.
Yeah.
But we never climbed, you know, the big heights really. Vic had a day job, I had a day job.
Yeah.
Boys all had a day job.
Yeah.
I can't remember whether it was a memorial concert or a benefit concert for the late jazz promoter Bix Curtis, who lived in Southend for years and was a great friend of Kenny and myself and many other people on the jazz scene. Anyhow, one night for Bix we held a concert at the 100 Club, which is London's oldest jazz club. It's now been there for 60 years. And it was a high profile event. People like George Chisholm, Kenny Baker, Tommy Whittle, I think, Lenny Felix, a lot of the biggest stars were gathered. But I think it was probably myself who asked Kenny if he would be kind enough to bring his group up to the 100 Club, which he did. He brought his current line-up with Vic Wood. And they did the first set. And I can honestly say, I don't think I've ever seen so many astonished faces around the bar. A lot of fine old professionals were saying, who are these? Where did they come from? They're fantastic. And I can tell you that Kenny's band tore the club apart. Now, had I been him, I think I'd have been on the phone to the club owner next week saying, can I come back once a month? Undoubtedly he'd have been allowed to and welcomed. But he's never been like that. He's a bit like Vic Wood. He's always tended to stay faithful to the Southend jazz scene. And so that's my reason for saying that in one way, Kenny is in the most likeable way not an ambitious man.
And how about his partnership with Vic Wood? Was it a good one?
Oh, I think Kenny's partnership with Vic Wood could arguably go amongst some of the greatest jazz partnerships in Britain. I mean, there is no doubt about it. I think that Vic Wood was an extraordinary, outstanding talent. He played, as we know, most naturally in the style of Clifford Brown, which is not easy for any trumpet player. I know lots and lots of fine players all the way around Britain who can't get around that style so easily. But Vic and Kenny fell into the same stylistic area. They were like two brothers, I always felt, in music. They were personally, seemed to me at all times to be very close. To my knowledge, they never had a cross word at any time. And they teamed perfectly. And outstanding music came as a result of it. It was such a tragedy when Vic died. And one of the other things I remember very well about Kenny was his address at the funeral. And I think he made the most remarkably moving opening to a eulogy that I've heard. He just stood in the pulpit and said, this is very hard for me. And it must have been hard, because Vic, I don't like the word genius, because that's far too well used and far overstating things, but pound for pound, I would say that Vic was unquestionably one of the best jazz trumpet players anywhere in Great Britain at any time. And because he was such a soulmate with Kenny, their partnership was a wonderful one, and it's a great pity it's not more widely recorded and remembered on record.
Do you want to say anything about Pete?
Pete, yeah, my dear friend Pete. I first met Pete in the Bacchanalia bar when in his early 20s, and got to know him straight away. And he used to go back to London after Bacchanalia bar, and then he was doing 2 nights. I said, why don't you stay down? So he started staying with us when I lived in West Road. And we could become great friends. I introduced him to Trevor Taylor and all these people around the town. Sexton got to know, and he started playing round. And become great friends. And I said to him, look, instead of keep bloody staying with me, I said, why don't you get a flat or something?
Yeah.
So he did. Got a flat down South Church Road, I think it was at that time.
Oh, yeah.
Or somewhere off there. So he got a flat, and he had a place also in London.
Mm-hmm.
So he could, if he wanted to get down, he could stay down here. And he started staying longer and longer and longer, going up for his London gigs and coming back here, But I'll tell you a great story about Pete Jacobs. Well, it's 2 great stories actually. One that most people know about, but for anybody who's never heard this story, he was doing a pub in London one night. Of course, everyone knows Pete couldn't see. Another story also. And they were having after-hour drinks, and the police raided, and he didn't know. He was at the bar, a lot of chatter still going on, and they were taking a list of what the names of people, their address, and what they were drinking at the time the police came in. So the policeman came over and said, "Young man," he said, "what are you drinking?" So he said, "Oh," he said, I'll have a large scotch," because he was drinking scotch. I said, "I'll have a large scotch, thank you." And he thought he was taking the piss, the policeman, of course. And then someone trying to sign that Pete couldn't see. He went, "Oh." So I said, "Well, can I have your name and address?" So he said, "What for?" So, "This is a police raid, did you know?" Oh, he went. And of course, go no, but he never heard any more about it. But Pete used to like a drink, and so did I, so did Tony. We used to get home sometimes to our place. How we got home, I don't know. And one night, he used to have these glass eyes he used to take out at night.
He did?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, take them out at night. And we had a tile floor once. Oh, God. And I'm sitting in the other room and I hear, as if a marble had dropped across me. I heard him going, feeling so and so. And I went in there, he's on his hands and knees trying to find his bloody eye. Oh, God. Of course, I said, "Get up." I said, "Here it is." Gave it to him. He wiped it and put it in his pocket. But that's another story. But the biggest story out, poor old Pete come home from Westcliff, onto Westcliff Station one night, and he got off on the wrong side. You heard this?
I remember. I didn't hear the story.
And he fell off the platform and broke his leg. Very, very bad break, actually.
It was a long way down, I expect.
Yeah, a long way down, and along the line, and luckily that one of the station men was still there and heard him and got him off, because a train came in a short while after. And because that was on the other side. So he fell off the train, not off the platform actually, he fell off the train onto the line.
He opened the door the wrong side, didn't he?
And the line the train went off. Because he was the only one in the carriage, I suppose, nobody, But he had a very bad break. Anyway, at that time, my eldest son was in market research on these strong beers. And he had 3 barrels over of Lauenbrau and 2 other strong ones. I forget what they were now. What's the one you used to drink up there?
Kronenberg?
A Kronenberg, Lauenbrau and another one. There were 3 types, because he was doing this big beer research. And Davis, "I've got these." He said, "Do you want them? I'll have them delivered to you for." I said, "Yeah, okay." Now, that day he phoned me up. I got a phone call from hospital that Pete Jack was in there. So he was in a terrible state. Anyway, it works out. I'll just get the story shorter for you. My son delivered these 3 barrels, 88 pints in each one, delivered under my carport. Eileen, who had the Golden Lion, lent me these cooling taps, you know, the cooling gear, fixed that, and a phone call came and Pete said, can come to your place. So I said, yeah, righto. So he come to live with me, and I reckon he must have drank 2 barrels of that in the bloody time. It's exact. And I said to him, I always accused him, I said, you bloody knew those guys. I said, you got off that bloody train the wrong side on purpose because you know I got those delivered. I said, yeah, it all worked out. We always laughed over that. We had a great relationship. And on the morning before he died, I phoned him. I was going to Churchill's. I got him booked for the next Sunday with turntable. So I phoned him up. I got him at his bed. This was about 11:15 on the Sunday morning. I said, lazy bastard, laying in bed. Well, he said, blew right for you. I said, what's the matter with you? And so forth. So I didn't realise how bad he was, you know.
This was in hospital?
This is in the hospital. So I said, I'll be out Thursday, Wednesday or Thursday. So I said, well, look, Pete, I'll tell you what I've done. I've booked another band for next week. I say, this is what you're doing that for? What are you doing that for? I said, well, safeguard. I said, you haven't been well. Had a go at me, did, about booking another band. So I said, I had a little jaw with him. I said, he told me what was wrong there. He said, look, I've got to go now because they came around to clean something, do something. He said, I said, all right then. I said, I'll give you a call in the week. 24 hours later, I got a phone call. He'd died. I couldn't believe the conversation I had with that man 24 hours previous. I mean, because I always had a little go at Pete, because that's how it was with him and I, and he loved it. Yeah. He loved the banter. Yeah. Because I wouldn't I never treated Pete other than normal. Right. And that's how he wanted it. Yeah. But as I say, I've got this 1,000 stories. I can't, get them all. Yeah. I mean, I can go back. Probably my favourite tenor player of all time must be Tubby Hayes, because he was such a great player. I love Roddy Ross on baritone, who was also a wonderful friend of mine. And on alto, I've got to say, Joe Harriott was out of this world.
I already know this because you mentioned it earlier, but I don't think the camera's rolling. Do you plan to continue promoting live music?
Not after the 28th of this month, April. I tell you, I'm going to be on the advisory side of that, but I'll promote my own little group, because as I say, I'm 70 now. I haven't sort of got the energy of running around so much, and I just want to do more work with my quartet. But as we said, the venues are getting less, and it's hard, But I would love to find a near country pub and do a session, say, every other week. Right. And have another band do, with me. Yeah. So you've got two types of band. Yeah. Twice a month. Right. I want to do that. I'm trying to find a pub at the moment that will do that. But it's very, very hard because charging on the door, as you know, in a pub's very difficult unless it's separated. Yeah. I mean, you want a nice room at the back. But you've got to find the right venue. I mean, there are pubs around, but it's not in the right position. Yeah. People won't go to certain pubs. And of course, the drink law's killed. Yeah. Helped to kill live music. Yeah. I mean, if there's people, I hope there's people like me around in the future, because if not, live music's going to bloody well die.
That's right.
Does Kenny encourage other players as well as himself, would you say?
Well, I think that's one of the great things about Kenny Baxter. I mean, the last time but 2 that I saw him, he was presenting the Quentin Collins Quintet down at one of his newer clubs. Now, as we know, he's a great tenor player. But on this particular occasion, he was just sitting at the door taking the money with Tony. And that's always been, I think, one of his strongest and most likeable and admirable points. The fact that he is constantly encouraging new players. A few years ago he championed Steve Waterman, who's now reckoned to be one of our greatest trumpet players. And, well, I have to say, I mean, going right back to our days, back in the 60s, he was very encouraging to me. He's never been a selfish performer. A lot of good tenor players like him around the country say, well, look, come along and guest with my group, and I'll be playing tenor, and it'll be my rhythm section, and so on and so forth. But Kenny's never done that. He's always been wonderful at stepping back and saying to young talents in particular, but of course established stars as well, look, come along, take over the show, bring your music to the people, and I'll step back. And there are a lot of musicians who are more ambitious than that, and therefore, in my view, less likeable. I think he's tremendous, as a, if you like, some sort of jazz philanthropist.
Finally, Digby, how would you sum up Kenny Baxter as a musician and man?
I would sum up my friend Kenny Baxter as a warm-hearted, fine musician who's given the ultimate. He's given his life to jazz music and to the musicians that play it. There couldn't be a finer epitaph than that, and no one musician can do more than give his life to the music. And I think the fact that he was an engraver, I think, for some of his life, doesn't alter the fact that everything that we remember about Kenny is really concerned with our beautiful music. And I think you can simply say that he's done as much as any of us can ever do, which is to give his life, heart and soul to the music, and to do it in a way that has endeared him to thousands of musicians and friends. And I mean, that's a great life's work. If it stopped tomorrow, he'd have done more than most other people do in 3 lifetimes.
Overall, are you pleased with your achievement in bringing the experience of live music to what must be a huge audience over the years?
Yes, I am. I really, you know, sometimes, I mean, I think to myself, you've done well really, because you brought so many people together. I've got some great friends and great followers. I mean, I've got people who go wherever I go with my name, they come.
Yeah.
I'm not saying every time, but I always got that little following, you know, that secures me on a gig. I'll tell you what, if I met my maker tomorrow, I don't think I would change anything really. I'd say thanks. I would really, you know. My wife gets on my nerves sometimes, but other than that.